It's already the 11th meeting of our seminars on creativity, quite an achievement. And there is already out our call for paper for our conference, international conference on creativity, open until half of January, available on the MyExperience Molise website. And today we are pleased to have a very young but already experienced researcher, Selene Arfini from Università of Pavia, and she's a research fellow at the Department of Humanities in Pavia. And research focus includes many areas of philosophy, cognitive philosophy, and not only, like epistemology, cognitive science, and philosophy of science and technology. And she already published important paper on a variety of themes like ignorance and serendipity, and on epistemology, social epistemology, and philosophy of science. And among the publication, I will mention her book, her first book, I suppose, in 2019, Ignorant Cognition, a philosophical investigation of the cognitive features of not knowing, published by an important international publisher, Springer. So we can, of course, talk later about any issues or curiosity. So I will leave the floor immediately to Selene, and we can start. We have more or less 45 minutes, and then the same for questions. Thank you very much, all of you.
First of all, thank you so much for this kind introduction and for inviting me to speak to these seminars. From what I understand, these events are designed to discuss a variety of themes, among which creativity plays a crucial role. So in my presentation, I will talk about a topic, curiosity, which is usually presented as one of the root causes of creativity. In my talk, in particular, I will focus on some problems that make this apparently well-known phenomenon ambiguous and interesting in the philosophical and the psychological literature. I also need to tell you that I'm still processing some of the thoughts I'm going to present today, and so I'm really eager to know what you think about them and to hear your comments, questions, or feedbacks at the end of the talk. So to dive into the particular mess I will talk about today, let's start with the first uncomfortable question I will try to tackle, which is also the subtitle of my speech. Can we become curious about something even if we don't care about it at all? At first, the obvious answer to this question seems to be no. I mean, when we think about what arouses our curiosity, the first things that come to mind are things that relate to our passions, to what we work on, to our hobbies. I mean, these are the things that grab our attention in a way or another. But perhaps, have you ever spent a terribly long time scrolling through articles and posts that had absolutely nothing to do with your interest? And from a more theoretical point of view, if we can become curious about just what we already know and love, how do we approach topics and things that are new to us? Also, on the contrary, it is not always a given that if we care about something, we are automatically curious about everything connected to it. For example, have you ever found yourself fighting to stay awake during a presentation regarding one of your main topics of interest, or an issue that you deeply care about? And yes, this is the part of my speech in which I hope this is not your fate at the end of this talk. I mean, I wish you will not fight to stay awake during the presentation. I'll try not to make you fall asleep. I promise you that. Anyway. These situations follow from the fact that it is not clear whether what people care about has an impact over what steers their curiosity. Indeed, on one hand, some situations can only be explained suggesting that what people care about has a small or no impact on what they are curious about. For example, clickbait headlines, the structure of jokes, and even horrific images and videos can steer people's attention and curiosity, even if normally people do not care about these things or do not value that particular content. In case of the aversive curiosity, horrific images and videos are something we are curious about even against our better judgment. On the other hand, different studies have recently found empirical support to say that some things that people care about, for example, the popularity of a certain content or its connection to our interest and to our comprehension, can highly influence our curiosity. We are curious about something that we can understand on a certain in a certain way on a certain level. So what's right and what is the reasons behind these two very different hypotheses? In order to address this question, in this presentation I will follow this very brief outline. First, I will briefly present the state-of-the-art regarding curiosity in the philosophical and psychological literature. Unfortunately, I need to warn you that for time constraints, I will be very brief in this summary, and I will possibly reduce some of the nuances in the literature to put some authors and theses together. In this first part, I will also present some defining characteristics of curiosity based on the relevant and available literature. Then I will propose a transformation of the original question based on the examination of not just the concept of curiosity, but also on the notion of values, or what we care about and value. In order to do that, I will adopt the reflections put forward by philosopher Henry Frankfurt on the importance of caring. And this will allow me to reframe the initial question into what I call the chicken-egg problem of curiosity. I will argue that in order to address the chicken-egg problem of curiosity, it will be useful to consider that a special kind of ignorance, borrowing also some intellectual tools from the new direction in ignorance studies. Finally, in the last part of my talk, I will propose to look at curiosity using an embodied and an ecological account of cognition. In particular, I will propose to read the impact of what people care about and value as the perception of what Lorenzo Magnani calls moral mediators, which are basically how values and what we care about is embedded in the things we see. I will argue that moral mediators afford us certain action, borrowing the technical term affordances from ecological perception. And they basically allow us to perform epistemic action, what Kirsch and Maglio call epistemic action. So action that let us find new information and ease our computational activities. Now, I know there is a lot of jargon in this last part, but I promise I will take my time to discuss this in details. So at the end, I will argue that if we abandon a reductive view on curiosity and we embrace a compound and complex definition of it as a bodily, emotional, and cognitive state, we can resolve most of its ambiguities. For example, it will be possible to see that values can impact what people become curious about, but also that becoming curious about something is symptomatic of what we care about and value. So there is much ahead to discuss. So let me first take a small step back into the state of the art of the philosophical and psychological research on curiosity. I can start by saying that both philosophers and psychologists have recognized the important role that curiosity plays in learning, creativity, and discovery. Despite the fact that they describe curiosity as an essential part or an essential trait of human cognition, they both ambiguously conceptualize it, and their conceptualizations are full of unsolved questions and seemingly contradictory answers. Looking at what has been done in particular in philosophy, I first must say that curiosity is a topic often dismissed by philosophers interested in cognitive processes, who have traditionally rather focused on wonder, knowledge, and the condition of reasoning. Instead, the few authors who have discussed the philosophical definition of curiosity come mainly from an ethical and an epistemological viewpoint. Ethically, the debate over curiosity has been divided over a question. Is it a vice or a virtue to be curious? While we are used to consider curiosity as a trait that must be praised, this perspective is relatively recent, and it masks a complex historical evolution. The traditional frame, indeed, with which philosophy has described curiosity is that to be curious is to be ignorant and eager to learn something new. And while learning has always been described as a good and legitimate activity, wanting to learn too many things or too fleetingly has always been judged as a poor investment of time and energy. And so it has led to an initial negative depiction of curiosity. For example, St. Augustine defines curiosity as a lust, an ocular lust that is mostly silly and even dangerous sometimes. And later, when philosophers have started considering curiosity no longer only a vice but also a virtue, they first distinguish a productive and disciplined kind of curiosity that leads, for example, to learning important matters, scientific facts, and so on, in opposition to an unbridled type of curiosity, which is instead considered silly and, again, may bring dangerous effects. Now, of course, we have a much kinder view on curiosity now, but this still debates. But still, this debate can be found again alive in a way in the social epistemological literature that is now concerned on the definition of epistemic virtue. In any case, one interesting reflection that emerges from considering the debate over curiosity as a virtue or a vice is the fact that most philosophers recognize the pleasurable nature of curiosity and the fact that it is almost irresistible. Indeed, when curiosity was considered a vice, it was so because one may resist it, but at great expense. Curiosity feels nice, basically, and it drives the agent to act. At the same time, the label of the virtue still pointed to the same features, but highlighted the fact that they can be used for good, to drive the agent to learn something important or useful. So the vice virtue debate points out that curiosity is both pleasurable, and that the agent has only a partial control over what they can be curious about. On the other hand, the epistemological reflection on curiosity have instead tried to point out the epistemological conundrum that is curiosity. Indeed, we become curious of something when we know enough to know that we don't know enough about certain factor, certain thing. For this reason, the philosopher Ilan Inan calls the object of curiosity the inostensible reference, since it is particular, very particular, but nonetheless unknown to the subject. And other epistemologists follow instead the so-called QDK model of curiosity. It basically defines curiosity as a cognitive state that emerges in response to a question that pops into an agent's head. It is driven by a desire to know, and it ends when the agent has obtained the knowledge that they wanted to gain. Now, the interesting take on curiosity that emerges from the epistemological reflection regards the idea that curiosity, for example, is not like wonder, a state that can survive without a specific subject. We are not curious about everything. We are curious about specific things, certain things. Not only that, curiosity is specific, and it rises and declines following the attentional investment of the agent, the desire to know of the agent, wants to know that exact thing and then moves on with basically other cognitive states. So the epistemological reflection points the attention to the fact that curiosity is really specific and a temporary state, is not a longing state. So, of course, one thing that is barely present into the philosophical literature is the fact that curiosity is not simply an intellectual and abstract state, but it is rooted into emotional dynamics and bodily dynamics. This aspect has been a little but further investigated in the psychological literature. Indeed, psychologists interested in curiosity have paid attention to how curiosity can tie together cognition and motivation. And for this ambiguity, the psychological literature on curiosity is a bit muddled. For example, there is no consensus over how we should define curiosity, which processes lead to its arousal, and how we should describe its affective dimension. Lowenstein points out that we can identify three main waves of research on curiosity. In the first one, psychologists look for the causes of curiosity, the reason behind its appeal, and its determinants. In the second wave, authors propose different measures of curiosity, psychological measures. In the third and current one, basically all the unsolved issues are at stake. Also, the chicken-egg problem, what I will describe as the chicken-egg problem, belongs to this third wave of research. So, looking at the psychological research done on curiosity, the question that regards the role of values in it, while it really belongs to the third wave of research, it also relates a lot to the research done on its causes and determinants. And this have been found in few traits that determine if something can arouse the curiosity of an agent. And for example, I think that is new, complex, about which the agent are uncertain of, or that can conflict with their expectations, but nonetheless that they can comprehend, is something that can, of course, pique the interest of an agent. I, for example, love board games, and these are the traits that basically define my perfect board game. The problem that arises with the psychological assessments of these determinants, nonetheless, are mainly three. First, the between persons variability. And there is no surprise there. Not everyone loves board games. It's a pity for me, but it's unfortunately true. So I very much know that one thing that can arouse this curiosity of someone can leave the others quite bored or not impressed. Secondly, there is also a within person variability. The same person can become curious of something one moment and then might become completely bored by the same thing on another time. Finally, there is also the fact that curiosity undetermines the so-called problem choice. Basically, if we take all the determinants of curiosity, we should become curious of many things, too many times a day, every day. And this doesn't happen. We don't. We are actually very selective in what arouses our curiosity. And we don't become curious of everything that is complex, uncertain, comprehensible, new, and so on. So why does something spark our curiosity and not anything else? This question will lead us to transform the initial query of the talk into what I call the chicken egg problem of curiosity. How? Well, we first have examined and analyzed curiosity from the perspective of psychology and philosophy. About what we care about, there is little literature in unexpectedly little literature in psychology, but there are few authors in philosophy who have examined this issue. And here is important to say that I'm using value and what we care about as not synonymous of something that is morally important to us. I mean value in the most general way possible. And so I put what we value together, together with what we care about, what sparks something in us, what interests us, but it doesn't need to be technically important in a more general or universal sense. And just to make an example, I can value and care for my car because it was the first one I bought with my money, but I very much know that is a pile of rubble, that is a mystery how it can take me from one place to another. It is not technically important, it's not important for anyone else, but is something I care about. It's not even important as an object to me. It's important in a more affective sense, if you can allow it. So in philosophy, there is an author that has already tried to answer the question regarding how we can tie together values in a moral sense and caring, or what we care about. Harry Frankfurt, in a paper called The Importance of Care, points out that caring can be taught as a broad notion that only requires the self-consciousness and agency of the subject. Caring basically is about investing time and energy into doing something with, for, or because of one thing. The agent must act because they care about something, and the action, like my activities to maintain my car functional or barely functional now, even if they are boring, even if they are not important, I do them because I care about the fact that I have a functional car and my car in general. So it is not always what we think is important that defines what we choose to dedicate our attention to, but the fact that we spend our attention, energy, and time in doing something, or in doing something for that thing or with that thing, speaks of what we care about and value. So this definition of what we care about changes a bit our perspective over the initial question, right? Indeed, if we become curious of something, we invest time and energy. Basically, just because we follow this curiosity, we act upon our curiosity into finding more on that thing. And even if we don't believe it is useful, important, or necessary for us. And indeed, Frankfurt explicitly said that we should see a difference between importance and what we care about. Even if something is not technically important, again, we cannot care about it even against our best intellectual judgment. And so getting back to the examples with at the beginning of the talk, we can say that maybe we think that the contents that drive our attention when we scroll the social feed, for example, on social media, are not important. If we spend time and energy following them, though, we are caring about them. We are dedicating time, we are dedicating energy, we are caring in an active sense, in the Frankfurt sense. At the same time, we may think that a presentation, for example, is not, it can be technically important for us because it is about something that we normally enjoy or are interested in. But if we don't manage to to pay attention to it, if we are bored by it, we are not caring in the Frankfurt sense. Even if this thing doesn't lose importance in our eyes. So being curious in this sense is a way of caring, even if it's not a measure of the importance of what we care about. So we can say that in this sense, caring and curiosity naturally go together. The problem is how. This is more or less what I call the chicken egg problem of curiosity. Basically, the problem is, does curiosity comes from the fact that we care about something, or we start caring about something because we become curious about it? And this is a stranger version, basically, of the first, a strange version of the first question that has roots on both what we know about curiosity and what we can say about the activity of caring. And I believe that answering this question, even if now might seem trivial, would provide some clarity over other problems that still affect the philosophical and psychological literature on curiosity. So to approach this question, I believe we should start by referring to what the philosophical and psychological literature on curiosity has brought forward, enriching these takes with reflection from areas of research still not explored. In particular, since philosophical takes come from the definition of curiosity as a particular kind of ignorance, it would be interesting to expand the definition of curiosity, or what curiosity can mean, with reference to the so-called literature in ignorance studies. And in this expanding literature, first we need to say that lately ignorance has been approached and discussed not just as an abstract condition that affects the epistemological dimension of the agents, but as a multidimensional state that define not only the epistemic status of the agent, but also their affective, ecological, and enactive features and conditions. Whether ignorance can be seen as blissful or aversive, it is now no longer described as merely a lack of information that affects only the logical part of decision-making and problem-solving processes. But it is also described as what shapes how we feel when we confess our epistemic lacking, for example, and how we move into the world, making the decisions and looking for information. So different authors now join together the concept of ignorance and the actions we take when we are in an ignorant conditions. Thus, in this new perspective, we can reflect on curiosity, expanding the idea that is basically a strange state of ignorance. Indeed, curiosity seems to fit into the categories of those ignorant states which are marked by, for example, an epistemic tension, as, for example, the concept of culpable ignorance, the state in which we are ignorant of something and we know we should have known that particular thing. There is an epistemic tension because at the same time we don't know and we know that there is a lack there. And contrarily to the state of culpable ignorance, curiosity is also marked by a positive affective connotation. Like the state of ignorance that Vlad Glavenov calls wondrous ignorance, which affects the engaging relationship with other people, in which basically we know we are mostly ignorant about what drives other people or what interests other people and so on. In order to know more, we need to be positively engaging into a relationship with them. And basically the positive connotation of this kind of ignorance can be found also in what we can define as curiosity, I think. Finally, curiosity is also marked by a motivating factor, which puts it in the same category of what Wendy Ross calls creative ignorance, which is the state of uncertainty that defines the tension between the intention of the creators and the powerful resistance of the material on which they work. And this motivating factor, which is also the one that led to the desire part in the QDK model, is also the interesting part which ties curiosity to action, to the fact that we are moved by it in some way. So in the same way as creative ignorance is motivating because we want to shape our creation, curiosity is motivating because we want to know more about something and we do things in order to get more information. So looking at the epistemic affective and econoactive dimensions of curiosity, I believe we can discuss more appropriately its problematic traits and find an answer to the chicken-egg question. Indeed, considering the ignorance processes mentioned above, we know that the change of epistemic status does not happen in a vacuum. It happens as the agents move into the world, act on it, and have goals that can change depending not only on their epistemic and cognitive resources, but also on their affective states, their bodily conditions, and what the environment has to offer. So one way to frame more appropriately this question is to use some concepts that derive from an ecological and an active view of cognition. In particular, now I think it would be useful to present the notion of moral mediators, affordances, and epistemic action. Let's start with the less known one, or the notion of moral mediators. In the book Understanding Violence, Lorenzo Magnani presents moral mediators as beings, entities, objects, and structures that carry ethical meanings and allow people to reason morally. He basically wants to describe morality as something that is or can be distributed into the environment as much as cognition is, according to recent cognitive science theories. This means, though, that the concept of morality is a bit stretched out in this case. Indeed, moral mediators are not only objects that clearly embed a particular morality, as, for example, a cross does embed Christian morality, but all beings and things and structures that more generally embed value for people. And here the word value is used in the general way that Frankfurt also meant. So, for example, a cake is not necessarily a moral mediator, but a cake made for your mom's birthday becomes a thing that carries value because it means that you care for your mother, happiness on her birthday, and in that sense, it mediates your care, your caring. So what I think that the reflection on moral mediator can do in this context, it is the fact that they provide a reason why the state of curiosity is so specific. It also encapsulates the reason for which different authors, from philosophers to psychologists, see the influence of social values as important in the emergence of curiosity. Hume, for example, considered the concept of sympathy as the empathic connection to others as highly important to determine what emerges to our attention and our curiosity. Also because we share value with people. If we say that in order to get curious of something, that thing must mediate value for us, that thing must carry some emotional and psychological and moral value for us, also moral, taken as a loaded word, but generally in this case. It is easy to know why we can perfectly comprehend something that we find curious or that arouse our curiosity and not others. And the comprehension that comes from knowing that a specific thing has value to us makes us also comprehend and understand what kind of curiosity, what kind of state of curiosity a particular thing can arouse in us. So, just to make an example, even if it seems that way, we do not click on every kind of clickbait headlines we find. We click on just particular clickbait headlines just because we would spend our entire days just clicking to clickbait headlines if it weren't so. And we do that because we find something that speaks to our interests, speaks to us in the sense that it carries some value for us. So I'm arguing here that certain moral mediators, to become source of curiosity for us, must also invite certain action. Using clickbait as a transition, it's easy to see that a clickbait headline would not work as a source of curiosity if it wouldn't invite our click. It is called clickbait headline for a certain reason. in any case. So the connection between the state of curiosity and the suggested action can be made more understandable by suggesting that certain moral mediators, in order to arouse our curiosity, must afford us a particular action. And I'm using here afford as the technical term from ecological psychology. In particular, I particularly like the description of affordances given by Chamero in 2003, because it points the attention not on what the not on the object, not on the subject, but on the relation between those two. Indeed, Chamero's definition is affordances are relations between particular aspects of animal and particular aspects of the situation, which support, maybe demand a certain kind of action. And focusing on the action that the moral mediator must afford in order to fuel someone's curiosity, that action cannot be a simply pragmatic one, but it can be described and encapsulated by what Kirsch and Maglio defined as an epistemic action in a paper of 2004. An epistemic action can be any action that leads us to uncover new information or to basically ease our mental computation or our mental processes in any kind of context. In this sense, using once again the clickbait headline, we can use these three notions, moral mediators, affordances, and epistemic actions, to answer or to provide a tentative answer to the chicken-egg questions. Basically, something, in this case, a clickbait headline, emerges to our attention because it speaks of what we value or care about. And it affords a particular action, in the case of clickbait headlines, the click, which easily brings us to know more about that particular thing. And so, in this sense, curiosity is driven by what we care about and value as the first source of interest. We see a value in a particular thing because that particular thing works as a moral mediator for us. Of course, now, this particular answer does not answer all the problems of curiosity, and, for example, does not answer to the one we have already mentioned, the problem choice. We still perceive too many affordances related to too many things that we value every day. They cannot all drive us to a curious state of mind. But actually, this problem may be easily solved, reminding us that affordances do not only describe possibilities in the environment, but also define its constraints. As Phaeton and colleagues pointed out in a recent article, curiosity and creativity emerge not only because we see possibilities in the environment, but also because they define what we cannot do, given the possibilities we have. As they say, any kind of constraints plays a key role, an enabling role for creativity to arise. I think this is also true for curiosity. For example, if the agent chooses to pay attention to something, let's say again clickbait headlines, which is my favorite example, because I fall into this trap seriously too often. The clickbait headlines doesn't promise me or anyone else a particular, does not promise too much. Basically, it promises an answer to a particular question, and it does not provide reason to consider the action of clicking on it as too much expensive in terms of time or attention for the agent. Basically, if I see a clickbait headlines, I say, well, I'll spend 5 minutes into looking at this article. It will not be too much, right? Then there is the rabbit hole of maybe 1 hour spent on the internet to follow this action. But still, the clickbait headline affords us just a very specific, quick, and simple action. If instead I buy a book, I'm not just expressing my curiosity over that particular subject, but I'm also, if I want to read that book, I need to also evaluate the time and energy I can spend in reading it, maybe in how many sittings I will finish a particular book. So if I come across these very two different moral mediators, one interesting clickbait headlines on maybe board games, and one interesting book, I need to evaluate not only how much I care for one or the other, but also how much the epistemic action I will take in order to satiate my curiosity, how much expensive in terms of energy and time that particular action is. So basically, values may shape what we become curious about, but also curiosity as a process, as an embodied and ecological process, as an inactive process, defines the priorities and the features of what we care about and values. If I, for example, end up spending too many hours in looking at the post and clickbait headline instead of reading a book, which I would probably had the time to do, I am defining what I care about. I am shaping my values and my activities of care. And this shaping is also driven by my curiosity, how my curiosity is defined in my environment. So, in conclusion, if we embrace a compound and complex definition of curiosity as a bodily and emotional and a cognitive state, we can resolve some ambiguities, at least, that the chicken-egg problem poses by considering curiosity basically a symptom of caring and caring a guide to curiosity. And of course, this does not resolve all the issues of creativity that regards creativity. For example, it does not answer the many questions regarding curiosity and the interesting phenomenon of serendipity, or it does not answer the question regarding how curiosity affects impasse, or how a state of impasse affects our curious state. But I hope this framework gives us some intellectual tools to deal with these questions in a more nuanced and cognitively grounded way. So, hoping to not have bored too many of you, and hoping to have aroused a bit your curiosity regarding what we can still learn about curiosity. I want to thank all of you for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to your questions, comments, or feedback.
So thank you very much. As you could see, our webcam lost curiosity in the middle of the talk, but unlike us, it was very interesting. And sorry if you can't see me anymore, but I hope you can listen.
Yeah, I can hear you. No problem.
And okay, so